The rainfall began with a whisper that evening in Maple Creek. Gentle droplets tapped against the glass. Emily perched at her bedside, gazing into darkness, consumed by memories. 2 years had passed since Daniel, her beloved husband, died, and while the months had eased her anguish, the emptiness within these walls remained deafening. She longed for his voice, the way he'd soothe her during tempests. Wind screamed beyond the walls, and lightning split the heavens, rattling every pane. Emily exhaled deeply, wrapping Daniel's worn sweater closer around herself. The fabric still carried traces of hemp-cedar wood and fresh soap. A gentle tap sounded at her bedroom door. Mom, her 8-year-old boy, Liam. His tiny voice shook like the trembling windows. Emily pulled the door open to find him standing there, no shoes on his feet, gripping his comfort blanket. Eyes enormous with terror. Thunder boomed again, making him flinch. "I can't fall asleep," he breathed. "It's too frightening." Emily's smile came tenderly, though her heart broke for him. "Come to me, darling," she said, dropping to her knees and embracing him. His tiny fingers felt ice-cold, and he pressed his face into her neck. She lifted him to her bed and settled him beneath the covers next to her. The downpour intensified. Lightning blazed through the fabric, illuminating their faces in rapid flashes of brilliant white. Liam squeezed her hand firmly. "Mom," he said, after several heartbeats, his tone small and earnest, "do you believe Dad hears the thunder where he is?" The inquiry struck her without warning. Emily's chest tightened. She studied her child's round, untouched face, his eyes searching hers. Desperate for comfort she wasn't certain she possessed. "Perhaps he does," she answered gently. "Perhaps he's somewhere above, experiencing this rainfall alongside us." Liam bobbed his head, his eyelids growing heavy, yet finding solace in her response. "Do you believe he thinks about us?" he murmured, barely audible. Emily stroked his hair backwards and offered a faint smile. "Without question, darling, but I believe he's also filled with pride for us." Liam's mouth curved into a drowsy grin as he nestled closer. His head found her arm, his breathing becoming slow and unsteady as thunder echoed once more. Emily observed him surrender to slumber, the purity of his expression glowing softly in the pale light. She listened to the rainfall's melody blending with his gentle breaths. For this singular moment, she synchronized her breathing with his, discovering the tranquility she hadn't experienced in endless months. Her gaze drifted toward the ceiling, following the delicate shadows formed by lightning. Countless memories inhabited these rooms. Evenings overflowing with joy, celebrations of birthdays, tales spoken before bedtime. Now only she and Liam remained, two spirits attempting to construct something from the fragments left behind. She carefully repositioned the blanket over him, her fingertips grazing his face. The burden of parenthood, devotion, and grief weighed upon her heart. Yet she didn't weep. She had discovered how to remain resilient for Liam. He was her purpose, for continuing forward, for finding happiness when existence felt overwhelming. Another lightning flash illuminated the space, and for one brief instant, Emily believed she glimpsed Daniel's image in the window, a recollection, an illusion of light, or perhaps simply her soul yearning for him too intensely. She shut her eyes, murmuring a wordless hope. "Continue protecting us, Daniel, particularly him." The tempest beyond grew more violent. The wind pressed against the glass like phantom fingers. The branches swayed, limbs scratching softly against the panes. But within this room, there existed comfort. Emily encircled her boy with her arm. Sensing the rhythm of his breathing, she recalled how Daniel used to embrace her identically steady, secure, reassuring. For a breath, she permitted herself to revisit that sensation. The recollection arrived gently, resembling an aged photograph. She missed how his amusement used to permeate the house, how his existence transformed even storms into peaceful moments. The quietness following his departure had proved the most challenging part, so oppressive, it nearly felt sentient. Yet, lying here presently with Liam sleeping alongside her, she sensed a tiny flame ignite within her soul. It wasn't identical to before, but it represented something. The timepiece ticked softly in the shadows. The storm started to diminish, the thunder traveling farther into the distance. The rainfall's music became soothing once more, like a mother's song. Emily shifted her head marginally and observed her child's features, his lashes settling against his skin. He resembled Daniel so profoundly that gazing at him for extended periods almost caused pain. She extended her hand and wiped away a tear that had slipped free. Not wishing to disturb him, she spoke barely above silence. "You're protected, my precious one. Mother is here." The space was shadowy, the candle flame dancing gently across the surfaces. Emily rested her head against the cushion and closed her eyes. For the first occasion in countless weeks, she allowed herself to rest completely. She didn't contemplate the expenses, the isolation, or the infinite nights. She'd sobbed herself unconscious. This evening, all she experienced was her child's pulse beside her and the peaceful solace that arrived after the tempest. Beyond the walls, the thunder rolled one final time before disappearing into remoteness. The storm was departing, both externally and within her spirit. And though she didn't recognize it presently, this night, the one that commenced with terror and thunder, was the night that would silently begin to transform everything. Because occasionally it's within the center of a storm that the initial glow of restoration starts to emerge. And for Emily, that glow commenced with a simple tap on the door and the sound of her child's small voice calling, "Mom." The morning following the thunderstorm, sunshine streamed through the kitchen window, cascading over the table where Emily sat with her coffee. The atmosphere smelled of damp soil and fresh precipitation. Liam was outdoors, leaping in puddles, giggling as if last night's fear had vanished completely. Observing him, Emily experienced a silent contentment. Storms don't persist eternally. She was discovering that truth as she stepped onto the porch. Pulling her cardigan tighter, she detected activity across the road. Mark, her recent neighbor, was collecting fallen limbs from his property. He glanced upward, grinned, and shouted, "Difficult night." Emily returned the expression, "That's accurate." Liam struggled to sleep through all that thunder. Mark chuckled, brushing rainwater from his coat. Grace experienced the same. "She appeared in my bed around midnight. Appears the storm frightened everyone." Emily laughed quietly. It certainly did. It had only been several months since Mark relocated to the neighborhood. He was in his middle 30s, pleasant-featured with a peaceful energy that occupied the silent spaces. Emily didn't know extensive details about his history, except that he was raising his daughter independently. They had shared cordial greetings, engaged in brief conversations, but this morning seemed different. There existed something comfortable about the exchange, something authentic. "Appears the storm created quite a mess," Mark said, noticing the damaged branches near her fence. "I can assist you clearing that, if you wish." "You needn't," Emily responded. "I understand," he said plainly, "but I'd like to." She paused, then acknowledged with an appreciative smile, "Very well, I'm grateful." Mark crossed the pavement, retrieved a rake from his property, and began assisting her collect the dispersed leaves and twigs. Liam quickly participated, laughing as he attempted to transport branches, nearly matching his height. "You're powerful, young man," Mark said, smiling toward him. "I'm assisting, Mom," Liam declared with pride. Emily observed the two of them and experienced something she hadn't experienced in considerable time: warmth. Not merely from generosity, but from human connection. For years, she had constructed barriers around her emotions, terrified to permit anyone to proximate. But Mark's company was comfortable, secure, like sunshine following an extended winter. After they completed the cleanup, Mark offered her a cup of tea he brought from home. "Imagined you might require this," he said. "Thank you," she said, clasping her hands around the heated cup. "You're unexpectedly thoughtful," he smiled. "I simply enjoy being considerate." They settled on the porch stairs, observing their children pursue each other through the puddles. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It felt stabilizing. Emily hadn't recognized how profoundly she missed adult companionship, the comfort of straightforward conversation that didn't center around responsibilities or sorrow. Mark glanced at her kindly. "You've resided here quite some time, haven't you?" "Nearly 6 years," she said. "Daniel, my husband, and I purchased the house before Liam arrived." Mark acknowledged, comprehending without demanding elaboration. "You've constructed something wonderful here." "Thank you." She looked downward, her fingers tightening around the cup. "I attempted to preserve things as they existed, but sometimes that's the most difficult challenge." He remained quiet for a moment before speaking softly. "You needn't preserve everything unchanged to honor someone." His words suspended in the atmosphere. Emily didn't respond immediately, but she sensed them penetrate deeply. He was correct. She had devoted so much energy clinging to yesterday that she hadn't noticed how much existence was anticipating beyond her threshold. When Liam and Grace came rushing up the stairs, drenched and laughing, Emily smiled. "All right, that's sufficient puddle leaping for today," she said, enveloping a towel around Liam. Grace giggled and gestured farewell as Mark stood to depart. "Thank you for the assistance," Emily said. "Gladly," he replied, his eyes genuine. "And listen, next storm will ensure the children have flashlights prepared." She laughed softly. Agreement. That evening, after settling Liam into bed, Emily sat by the window once more. The moonlight touched the wet foliage outside. Her thoughts wandered to Mark, his tranquil voice, the way he regarded her, as if he comprehended without inquiring. She wasn't certain what it signified or if it signified anything whatsoever. But for the first occasion in years, she didn't feel utterly alone. The days that succeeded were tender. Liam and Grace became inseparable, dedicating afternoons, sketching with chalk on the pavement, or constructing blanket fortresses in Emily's living room. Mark frequently stopped by delivering coffee or repairing small items around the house, a dripping faucet, an unstable gate, the porch illumination Daniel had installed years prior. One evening, as the sun descended low, painting the heavens orange, Emily saw Mark in his yard, repairing Grace's bicycle. Liam sat beside him, providing him tools. She observed from her porch, her heart strangely complete. She wasn't certain if it was admiration, appreciation, or something she wasn't prepared to identify. Later, Mark walked over, holding a mug of tea. "For you," he said with a grin. "You can't continue permitting me to be the sole one conducting the porch visits." Emily laughed and accepted it. "You're making it challenging to compete." He shrugged, teasing. "Perhaps that's the intention." Their eyes connected, and something unspoken transferred between them, soft but unmistakable. She turned away quickly, her heart accelerating for reasons she couldn't clarify. As the evening grew quiet, and the children's laughter dissolved into the background, Emily realized the world beyond her grief was still rotating, still abundant, with small moments that could make her smile once more. When she went to bed that night, she didn't dream of storms or isolation. She dreamed of sunlight, laughter, and the possibility that perhaps, just perhaps, existence was gently guiding her towards something fresh. And though she wouldn't acknowledge it yet, she knew profoundly that the tap on her door the night of the storm had opened more than simply memories. It had opened her heart. 7 days later, another storm arrived over Maple Creek. The atmosphere grew heavy and gray. The branches swayed and thunder grumbled in the remoteness. Emily stood by the living room window, observing the initial drops descend. She experienced that familiar chill, the kind that made her heart ache with recollections. Liam had gone to bed early, exhausted after playing all day with Grace. The house was silent except for the rhythmic tapping of precipitation on the glass. When the lights wavered and extinguished, Emily sighed. The power failure didn't frighten her, but the sudden darkness filled the space with memories she couldn't escape. She ignited a candle and observed the soft flame flicker, illuminating the surfaces in gold. She thought of Daniel again, his laughter, his warmth, the way he used to joke with her about being afraid of storms. He'd always stated, "It's simply the sky conversing, Em." But now, the sky felt more isolated than ever. A gentle knock on the front door startled her. The rain poured harder, and she hesitated before opening it. Mark stood there holding a flashlight, his jacket saturated from the rain. "Hello," he said, breathless but smiling. "Power's out on my side, too. Simply wanted to verify if you and Liam are all right." Emily stepped aside. "Enter before you catch a cold." He shook off the rain and entered. "Apologies, didn't intend to appear unannounced. I simply thought you might prefer not to be alone in the darkness." She smiled faintly. "You thought correctly." They sat at the kitchen table with the candle between them. The flame danced, illuminating their faces softly. For a moment, neither spoke. The rain's rhythm filled the silence, and it wasn't uncomfortable. It was calm, almost comforting. Mark looked around, his eyes discovering a picture on the counter. It was of Emily, Daniel, and a much younger Liam, smiling before a Christmas tree. "He resembles you," Mark said gently, gesturing toward the photo. Emily glanced at it, her voice quiet. "That was our final Christmas together." "I'm sorry," Mark said. "I didn't intend to." She shook her head. "It's all right. Speaking about him doesn't cause pain anymore. It simply reminds me that love can leave echoes." Mark's gaze softened. "Echoes can be beautiful, though. They signify something genuine existed there." The words caught her unprepared. She hadn't anticipated him to comprehend so profoundly. She looked at him for an extended moment, perceiving not simply a neighbor, but someone who carried his own quiet sadness. There was something in his eyes, a reflection of loneliness, yes, but also warmth. They sipped their tea slowly. conversing in low voices while the storm rolled outside. Mark told her about his late wife, how he still found it challenging to explain to Grace why she wasn't returning. Emily listened, her chest tightening with empathy. Two people, both attempting to rebuild, sitting across from each other in a house that smelled of rain and candlelight. It felt strange yet natural. At one point, lightning flashed bright, followed by a sharp crack of thunder. Emily jumped slightly. Mark smiled. You still dislike storms, correct? She let out a quiet laugh. I'm improving at it. He leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. You know, storms used to frighten Grace, too, but I tell her storms don't persist forever. They simply make the world clean once more. Emily nodded, her eyes distant. That's a beautiful way to perceive it. The rain softened for a while, and the candle burned lower. The flickering light made everything feel close to the table, their voices, their hearts. Emily found herself studying Mark's face, the kindness in his smile, the steadiness in his voice. It wasn't the flutter of new love she felt, but something quieter, something genuine. After a pause, she said softly, It's curious how we encounter people precisely when we need them. Mark looked at her for an extended second before replying, Perhaps that's how life repairs us through each other. Her breath caught for a moment and she smiled faintly, looking down. She didn't know what to express, but she didn't need to. The warmth in the room spoke for them both. Outside, thunder rumbled again, softer this time. Emily leaned her chin on her hand, her heart lighter than it had been in months. The ache of loss was still there, but it no longer felt unbearable. Perhaps she was ready to permit new light in slowly, gently, without guilt. Mark stood after a while, glancing at the window. I should return before Grace wakes, searching for me. Emily nodded, walking him to the door. The rain had eased into a drizzle. Thank you for verifying on us, she said. He smiled, gladly. And next time, if the power fails, you know where to locate me. She laughed softly. I'll remember that. Mark turned to leave, then paused. Good night, Emily. Good night, Mark. When the door closed, Emily leaned against it, her heart strangely full. She could still smell his rain-damped coat in the air, still hear the echo of his words, perhaps life repairs us through each other. She extinguished the candle and climbed the stairs quietly. Liam was asleep, his small face peaceful under the soft glow of his nightlight. Emily kissed his forehead and whispered, You're protected, my love. Then she stood by the window one final time. The storm was fading, the clouds slowly breaking apart, revealing a sliver of moonlight. She smiled, her reflection faint in the glass. For the first time in years, she felt hope stirring in her chest. Not the kind that erased the past, but the kind that made the future seem possible again. The thunderstorm had brought back old memories, but it had also brought something unexpected, a gentle reminder that healing doesn't always arrive with noise. Sometimes it comes quietly, in the form of a neighbor's knock, a shared cup of tea, and the courage to permit someone new into your life. The following morning arrived, soft and bright. The world cleansed by the rain, the atmosphere smelled fresh, the sky clear after the stormy night. Emily woke to the sound of birds beyond her window, and sunlight spilling across the floor. For the first time in an extended while, she didn't experience that heaviness that usually resided in her chest. There was calm inside her, quiet but warm. She slipped from bed and discovered Liam asleep on the couch downstairs, still wrapped in his blanket. His toy car was clutched in one hand, his mouth slightly open. Emily smiled, brushing his hair gently away from his forehead. He had slept through the remainder of the storm without fear this time. She kissed his cheek and whispered, You're growing braver every day. As she turned toward the kitchen, she noticed something on the counter, a small note tucked under her coffee mug. The handwriting was simple and familiar. Thanks for last night. Perhaps next time, no thunder required. Mark. Emily couldn't help but laugh quietly, shaking her head. She poured herself a cup of coffee and stepped onto the porch. Across the street, Mark was already outside repairing his mailbox that the wind had knocked over. When he looked up and saw her, he waved. She raised her coffee in greeting, smiling back. It felt easy now, the kind of easy that didn't need words. Later that afternoon, as the sun stretched long and golden across the neighborhood, Grace and Liam played in the yard, their laughter echoing through the quiet street. Emily sat on the porch steps, watching them draw with sidewalk chalk. Mark crossed over, carrying 2 glasses of lemonade. Thought you might need this, he said with a grin. Are you attempting to replace my coffee habit? She teased. Perhaps, he said, handing her the glass. Coffee's for storms, lemonade's for peace.